Hey guys, Greg here, Bone Tactical, and today we're going to talk a little bit about wheels and tires. This is a wheel and tire episode. I'm going to show you some awesome footage of us up in the mountains doing some wheeling, all that kind of stuff. We're going to show you the breakdown, pulling them off and putting them on, pulling the old tires off and putting the new ones on. But first, while I've got these old tires here, I want to talk a little bit about the worst tires that I've ever had. The worst tire experience I've ever had was with Interco tires, and these are a representation of some of the best tires. I will talk about those later in the video and why they're the best, but what I want to tell you first off is that I just want to say I'm getting rid of these. It was a sponsorship deal we had worked out that they were giving me a major discount on the tires, and that's the only reason I ended up going with them. I tested out their new TSL radials, and they're just absolutely terrible. You can see here, I mean, it's just, the rubber is just terrible. So what I want to start off by saying is be aware of the rubber compound of your tires, all right? With a heavy vehicle, you want something normally that's load rated, and then the rubber compound is so important. The original TSLs were a sticky competition rubber that was pretty great off-road and just immediately burned up on-road. But these new radials, what they tried to do was they tried to make a copy off of like your Toyo Open Country or your Yokohama Geolander MTs. They tried to make something that was good both on and off-road with a harder rubber compound, and they just really failed at it. But I wanted to start off the video by saying finally getting rid of these tires. I blew through about 8 of them. The people at Super Swamper were absolutely terrible to deal with. They were treating me like crap, saying, you know, blaming the problems on everybody else, blaming the problems on Method Racing, you know, just really difficult people to work with. And then they even threatened to sue me if I kept saying the truth about the video, even though I was working with them on a sponsorship basis. So I'm finally glad to say that getting rid of that crap. So finally, we're going to talk about the new tires, okay? This is something you guys have really been wanting to hear. We've got our spare tire mount up on the top there, really awesome. We're out here doing some wheeling out in 4x4 country. These new tires are the Yokohama Geolanders, okay? They're 35s. I'm going to really briefly cover just about everything that I think is important as far as tires go. So these are 35s. 35s are basically the smallest tire that I would recommend for running if you're going to be doing a dedicated 4x4 rig or an Overland Expedition vehicle that you really want to be able to hit 4x4 terrain with, off-road, if you're going to be doing some off-roading. This makeup, I like to consider this really, honestly, the Toyo Open Country MT, but I bought these Geolanders because they're Yokohama, Japanese, they're pretty much an identical copy, and from what I can tell, it's the same thing. So my primary choice would have been Toyo, but I'm checking these out. So I'm just going to be completely honest with you guys. Toyo didn't want to help me out with a sponsorship at this point. They didn't, I sent them a message and told them I was doing this awesome build, and Method Race Wheels did get involved. Wheels are amazing. All right. Originally I was working with Super Swamper and just had a terrible, all kinds of problems with, went through 8 of their tires in no time, and finally got these awesome new tires. So size, 35s are bigger depending on the weight and size of your vehicle. You could get away with 33s if you're running something like, come over here and check this out. If you're running something like a smaller Tacoma or a Hilux or something like this little runner we've got here to go up in the mountains and pick up coffee, because this is so much lighter, you can get away with 33s. But still, that would perform better with 35s. It's just a lot of work to, and sometimes there's possible reliability issues with 35s on a car like that. But in order to go bigger, this is like maxed out without having to change the gear ratio, okay? And then it's pretty much maxed out without having to do a whole lot of extra modifications. What I had to do to get these on here was go with a 2-inch suspension lift, which is custom suspension we built, and then we went with a 2-inch body lift, which we just built some, I just made some polycarbonate discs, donuts, to put on top of the body mounts, and then that just raised the body up 2 inches, and then that gives us a 4 inches of extra clearance for the tires. So we were able to clear the tires. You want to be, when you go taller, you want to go wider. Okay, so these are wider. The wheels have a wider offset. The tires are 12.5 inches wide. If they were, the taller you go, the wider you go. You don't want to go taller on your vehicle as far as suspension goes. You want to go the absolute minimum. That's why we did the body lift split with the suspension lift for performance. Okay, now we did have to do some slight modifications, cutting on where the gear shifter is, a few, a little bit of a Dremel work to make sure that the gear shifter wasn't slamming on anything, and you got to make sure that your brake lines are good. You might have to extend brake lines, all kinds of stuff. We had to do all kinds of little small details of extending stuff. It's a lot of work. You got to make sure you do it very well. Go over everything very carefully. So we talked about the rubber compound. I love these, and they're perfect for Overland Expedition because they're not stickies. They're not competition. This pattern right here is the minimum pattern. It's called an MT. You've got MT on here, which is like mud terrain, but it's really the most, in my opinion, it's the most aggressive all-terrain that you can get. There's not a whole lot of big gap in here. So what that means is you still have good on-road performance. You're not going to like fly off the road in a rainstorm or something like that if you have to drive on the road. But it's just, in my opinion, the perfect tread pattern for an all-around, just great all-around tire. It's got this, what you want to look for too is this right here where I'm running bead locks, so this means that I can air down the tire considerably. And then if I air down the tire a bunch, what that means is that I'll get all this tread. And remember, we said we want to go taller, you go wider, and then this tire will end up being like a 15-inch tire pattern or bigger, depending on how low I can air it down. I can air it down into 5 or 10 PSI, and then we're talking about getting a much bigger footprint, being able to get a lot more traction, and then not just this tread, but then we're using this tread as well. So you want to look at the density and the durability of the rubber based off of what you're doing. It's always what you're doing that you want to look at, and that's kind of the deal with this. Is as it's an Overland Expedition vehicle, I want tires that are going to last a long time, durable rubber, but also a balance between going off-road, and that's what I've found with these. If they're too aggressive, or if they're sticky, or if they're competition off-road tires, they're just not going to last, and they could even be dangerous on the road for extended driving trips. That's really what I wanted to share about the wheels and tires. Leave your questions and comments below. Let me know what you think about wheels and tires. Thanks for watching. Bone out.